what history we want. Nowadays, the concept of history, the knowledge of history, and the teaching of history have become very much problematic. It has been very much clearly alleged that the English historians or the East India Company historians have totally torched the past of Indian culture, Indian society, and replicated it according to their whims and fancies. In the same way, it has been clearly spoken that some of the historians were committed to some party ideals and other more, and tried to write history in a wrong perspective. Here, a common man will be getting a question: what type of history we must have? It's an important question. History is understood to be an ending dialogue between the historian and his records. It is said to be an interaction between the past and the present. These two are the observations of Edward Henry Carr in his book What is History, which is a famous work. But history is totally typical one. It is the function of ego on the screen of nature in the scale of time. There the ego functions, the nature supports, and the time counts. The living time is the time of the chronology of the history. This definition clearly indicates that the ego is playing a major role in reading history, writing history, and making history also. Many people are there who can write history or who can read history, but very few people are there who can make history. The country requires history because the inspiring past of a particular country is always essential for the future. It is not simply a record of the events of the past or a record of the right and left of the movements, the record of some accidents, or the records of some natural hazards, or the records of some conspiracies or battles. History is something more. It speaks about the soul of the past, which is pervading the present. What is the soul of the past? The culture is the soul of the past. History has four limbs. One is geography, another is chronology, another is archaeology, another is anthropology. If these four are put together, then it becomes a good history. That means geography gives an index of the landscape, the functioning of the resources, and the supporting aspect of how the resources are made use. Anthropology gives the idea of what races are living on what landscape and how they are utilizing the resources in the landscape. The archaeology will be providing how the technology has developed to make use the resources, starting from the mud, wood, antler, stone, metal. In this way, different varieties of things have been made use for regular purposes. Archaeology will be speaking about this. Whereas chronology indicates what are the major changes, where there is a bypassing where there is an underpassing, where there is an intervention, where there is an intercalation. All these things are understood in chronology. Thus these four limbs, geography, anthropology, archaeology and chronology, must be clubbed together to understand a proper history. History must be impartial. It is not a judgment. It is not simply a record. It is not allegation of the later generations or the previous generations. History is like a flood. It's a movement, a biological movement, a sociological movement, a psychological movement, a cosmological movement, an astrological movement. All these five put together will become history. The cosmic power functions through astral area and it will be influencing the psychic, and it is worked through a biome and then working in the society. This is the history what we have to find out. But we are very much habituated from 1856 onwards for such history which is speaking about the wars and treaties, the aggressions, the invasions, the looties, the destructions, the religious conversions, the religious destructions, all these things besides the political intricacies and ups and downs in economies. And they are also supported by narrow social and individual tendencies which are speaking of a cultural hiatus. It's a very important point that the cultural hiatus will be prevailing throughout the period. And the present generation speaks how that hiatus is totally closed. It is bridged in order to have a path for the future. This must be learned from history. And moreover, history is clearly depicting or mirroring the cultural tendencies. Culture is intervening variable between the nature and the human organism. This is one of the observations of the anthropologists. So that a variable varies from time to time. But nature is the guideline. Nature is the friend, philosopher, sovereign and absolute power. Man must be within the fold of the nature, and then he has to make out his psychic and biological identities in a sociological network with relation to a political-territorial organization. This concept is to be very much clearly understood by most of the people. But simply people read history, rebuke history, negate history, but they don't go into the intricacies of history because they are all not historians. A cinema actor only knows how to act on a screen. A drama artist knows how to present his feelings before the audience on a theatre. In the same way, only historian knows how to probe into the past, how to dig up the past, how to understand the antiquities, how to understand the antiquarianism and the biological, sociological, psychological, metaphysical, astrological powers working on the man, through the man, by the man, making a history. Then only history will be a complete picture. And that is why history is having its own philosophy. The philosophy of history is totally different from the arguments like agnosticism or naturalism or socialism or communism or some isms more. History speaks about only one identity, that is an interaction between the nature and the man, the observation of the cosmic power through the astral agencies, reflecting the mind and acting through the body, and being supported, commanded, articulated by the society. Then the land controls, society orders, mind thinks, astrology provides an articulation of path. These are all a part of history. History is thus a study of the ego on the scale of nature in the course of time. This history is very much required and it must be prepared without partiality, without bias. The bias in history is very much questioned and identified, and that is why history must be an unbiased witness for the past, to speak about the past for the betterment of the next generation.